So the next thing that we're going to talk about is using the rnaturalearth package. I really like this package because I think that it sort of naturally displays the countries nicely. You can use NE countries to sort of break up and get a world map of all the countries of the world. So again, before we do this, you're going to have to download, make sure you have these two packages installed, rnaturalearth and rnaturalearth data. So again, do the install.packages for both of those if this is the first time that you're using them. If it's not the first time that you're using them, you should be able to just run this and load the packages into your instance of RMarkdown. So don't worry too much about where this is, but there's this any countries that'll essentially give us a data set of the world. So if I run this, okay, now you'll notice that world has come up over here in my environment, and let's just take a look at it. Okay, so it's got some information here on the different countries, and remember I was talking to you about the sovereign. I think that's where my brain was getting that from, right? So it'll tell you whether they're an independent country or whether they're a sovereign country or whether they're independent. There's more information on all kinds of different things. Let's see. Where do they go? Here we go. We've got their economy, their income, their population, the last time they did a census, all kinds of different information there, okay? So again, don't worry about too much where that comes from, but now that we've got this world data, you can take that code and use that to get your own graph. And so let's talk about how we plot that. So again, we're going to use ggplot, and then we do geom_sf, and we're going to use the world data, and I'm going to keep my theme light, and I'm going to give you the title as being world map. So that's what it's going to look like by default using this rnaturalearth command. So we've got a nice map of the world broken down by countries. Okay, we can take this and subset it either by continent or by country. This is one reason I like the rnaturalearth package. So for example, Canada, one of my favorite countries where I was born. So I might do that. So all I've done is taken the world data set, right? And I piped in a filter. So I'm saying filter out only the countries that have the name Canada. And then I've saved that as the data set Canada. Okay, so let me just run that and you'll see the graph and everything. But you'll see that Canada was saved over here. So we can see Canada data set, and then we're going to take that and plot. So ggplot, geom_sf, we're going to use the Canada data set. That's the graph we want to do, and then I've added a title and a theme. There we go. There's my home country. What you'll notice is that this is a bit of a slightly different projection than what most often I think Canada is presented as. The world is round. It's a globe, surprise. And so there are lots of different ways to sort of flatten the earth. And I'm sure that there's people in this room who know much more about this than I do, but I would say that there's, lots of different people who like different projections for different reasons for different places. And so I just wanted to note that we have this coord_sf function that will allow us to change the coordinate system. So by default, they're going to use just longitude and latitude as the X and Y axis. And for many countries, that looks totally fine. I think that is, they call that the WGS84 coordinate reference system, just using longitude and latitude. But you may want to sort of update that to being a different coordinate system. So for example, I think I used this 3347, which is the Lambert projection. And so if we look at that, I'll just show you how that sort of changes, right? So now it's making these lines be more curved, okay? And I think quite often Canada is projected this way, especially because it's so close to the North Pole. So so that's one option. So I'll just say that and put that there so that if you're working with a country and you're like, hey, that doesn't look quite right, one option is you can change the projection. Again, there might be people in this room who know more about it than I do, but I quite often will just sort of Google, right? And I'll say, hey, Canada, what projection would look good? And CRS coordinate reference system, and it'll usually tell you the number, or it'll give you a bunch of different options and you can decide which one you like. The other thing that you can use this coord SF function for is to be able to change the Y limit and the X limit to sort of crop it a little bit too. So I don't think I think that's our next example, but just sort of so you're aware that there's some options there for being able to customize the coordinates that are being displayed. So for Europe, I did this. So again, I took the world data and I filtered out only those where it said the continent was Europe. Okay, and I saved that as a data set called Europe. And if I run that code, you'll see that, you know, Europe will pop up over here in my global environment. I can try plotting that. And so if I run that, you'll see sort of what that looks like. Now, what happens, I think all the European countries, there must be some over here that are classified. Oh, I bet that's the tip of Russia. There we go. So because Russia is included in Europe in this particular data set, it doesn't display super nicely. So again, we can use this coord SF function to sort of customize the latitude and the longitude. So maybe we want to just zoom in on maybe this area of Europe. Okay, and so again, you can kind of read off these numbers and say, hey, we'd want it to be between, you know, about here, minus 30, that would be 30 degrees west and 60 degrees. I think, yeah, look at that, that's what I chose. And then you can pick off the Y values that you'd prefer as well. So let me just run this so you can sort of see. There we go, there's the cropped version, okay, of Europe. What you'll notice here by doing it this way is because I've only selected those that where the continent is Europe, you'll notice that, you know, there are countries that are missing in here that weren't classified as some of these Europe countries that I asked for. Where of course in real life on the actual world, there are countries there. So if you'd like to still display those countries, right, you wouldn't do this first filter option, right? You would just plot the world. Here, let me just change that so you can see that, right? If I just plotted the world data on that limited thing, then you would end up seeing sort of all the countries that fall in that region, right? But if I only want to show the ones that are classified as Europe, then I would use this filtered Europe data. So that's a matter of preference depending on what your graph is and what you're trying to show. Last but not least, the US, because you go to school in the US at the very least, and so you might be interested in sort of graphing that. So again, taking the world data, filtering out the United States to create this USA data set and plot it. Let's just see what that looks like. And aha, what you'll notice is you've got, there's the continental US, but then we've got Alaska up here, we've got Hawaii here, and I'm gonna guess this is the tail end of Alaska that's kind of gets put over here. So again, we might want to kind of zoom in at least on the continental US. So I've picked out some latitude and longitude coordinates that I thought made sense. And then we can sort of see just the continental US. Okay. Again, if you wanted to display Canada and Mexico on here, you could totally do that. You just would, instead of using the USA data, you use the world data. And then all of the countries would be sort of displayed. So it's a matter of preference there. But I'll just leave this as USA for now. Okay.